I've decided to talk about ActivityPub. It's a relatively unknown protocol. However, I think it will be as important as something like HTTP. Right? It's a W3C recommended protocol, so it has reached the final status. All the iterations have been completed. It is now 1.0, but many developers are still unfamiliar. So I decided to take this topic. And I have some practical experience with this, so I can actually answer a lot of your questions. Right? So as I said about me, I like open source software. I enjoy programming in Ruby in particular. I also like to learn new skills, and that has been true for more than 2 decades, right? So here is something that you might have noticed last year, right? Last year, Twitter ran into some controversy because they were censoring or they were refusing to censor some certain accounts, and that angered a lot of Indian users. And they discovered this app called Mastodon. Mastodon is supposed to be an alternative to Twitter, with a difference, right? So the Twitter is a centralized system. Twitter is a central entity that where all the accounts are maintained, all the tweets are maintained. The governments can go and force them to delete accounts and tweets. They can decide their own policies, and somehow in some situations that runs into difficulties because not everyone agrees on what the moderation policies should be. So Mastodon suddenly became popular, and people it got coverage on BBC and a number of other portals, and then usage was thousands of people actually discovered Mastodon and then switched to it. So what is this Mastodon thing, right? Uh, Mastodon is in an app that implements the ActivityPub protocol. So here is a very, very simple explanation of ActivityPub, right? The way you think about email for messages, ActivityPub achieves the same paradigm for social networking, right? And we have seen how email has stood the test of time. Email was invented in 1970s, and today we are here in 2020, 50 years. If a protocol is standing 50 years of test, that means that the architecture is really solid, right? And the reason that works is because email is a federated protocol. You can have your own email server, I can have my own email server, I can create accounts on my server, you can create accounts in your server. We don't have to be subject to whims and fancies of each other, and yet we can still communicate with each other, right? This has not been the case with Facebook and YouTube and Twitter and all this centralized platform that have taken up since 2005, I would say. So Gmail came along and sort of started this trend, but Gmail is still implementing a standard protocol, right? So the core idea here is, if we allow people to run multiple servers which can synchronize with each other, the risks that come with the centralization of the moderation and the governance and the policy are completely eliminated. If you don't like Gmail's the way Gmail handles spam, you can go and open an account at hey.com or fastmail.com, right? And the protocol ensures that the identifiers that you use, so your identifier is not just Nilesh Trivedi, right? It says that Nilesh Trivedi at Facebook or at Twitter. And using that second domain part, we can actually resolve the names, and then we can still communicate while running this on multiple servers. So this is the central idea. And the problem, as I said, is that centralization leads to censorship, filter bubbles, moderation issues, disputes, and abuse, and a lot of things. And you will not always agree with what Twitter's policies are. Therefore, you should be able to choose your own server, your own instance. And this is already working for email. ActivityPub is an initiative that tries to bring the same paradigm to social networking. So what do I mean by federation? As I said, multiple server instances which can synchronize with each other like email, and you achieve decentralization of moderation policies. So yeah, you can run your own server if you don't like anybody, right? And it would be as good as anybody else's server. The protocol does not differentiate, does not give any privileged status to any of the servers. So yeah, ActivityPub is a very simple protocol. It's essentially HTTP plus JSON, and it was in the works for many years, but around 2018, it has reached the final recommendation status. And like a protocol, like email protocol, right, which has multiple implementation, same thing is true for ActivityPub. However, the schema and the objects that they have defined are actually quite flexible, which means that it is not just an alternative to Twitter, which is a micro blogging platform, but you can achieve the same sort of social networking broadcast follow model where users can follow each other. If I broadcast something, it gets delivered to all my followers. People can discover each other's content. The same paradigm is there in Twitter, in YouTube, and Facebook. All of those can be modeled on top of ActivityPub, and therefore you will hear about multiple apps which implement ActivityPub as a protocol. So Mastodon is one of the most popular one. It's a social app. But there are others like Pleroma. PeerTube is again decentralized, as in multiple instances which synchronize with each other, alternative to YouTube. And this has sort of now settled to be the dominant protocol. For a while, there were competing alternatives. So there was GNU Social, there was OStatus, there was Diaspora as a project, and now ActivityPub has sort of turned out as the winner. Being recommended by W3C obviously holds a lot of sway. So I'll actually try to go actual concrete details of the ActivityPub, why it matters, and not just as a user. We are here developers, right? So I'll make a case that it might be worth your while to implement ActivityPub in your protocol to become part of this larger ecosystem, which is called Fediverse, right? So yeah, how does it work? So as I said, there's a standard called Activity Stream 2.0. It is nothing but a combination of HTTPS and JSON with linked data. They define a extendable vocabulary of activities. So while there might be an activity called create note, which is like saying I posted a tweet, but they also have objects defined for follow and unfollow and groups, and I can post a review, I can upload a video, I can write a blog post, right? And each instance can determine its own rules, but this core schema remains shared. So when I say Fediverse, I mean there's a network of applications which all talk to each other via this shared protocol. So alternative for Twitter would be something like Mastodon or Pleroma. PeerTube would be an alternative to YouTube, which is again, you can create your own account anywhere. If you don't like anyone's servers, you can create your own server. Write freely. There are alternatives for Medium. I am coming from a place where I wanted to build an alternative to Goodreads, and I'll take a couple of minutes to talk about that, right? And this is my open source project. It's called learnawesome.org. And the problem that I was trying to solve for myself and people around me was that in this decade, we are not learning only from books, right? We are learning from courses. We have podcasts, we have newsletters, we had live streams and videos and MOOCs. And the discovery of such high quality resources is still completely broken. It's completely ad hoc, right? People are asking friends each other, right? What is the best course about JavaScript? Okay, I know Java. What is best way for me to learn Ruby? And I wanted to build this learning map of learning resources where you can find learning resources along with the reviews from the people that you trust. So they might be experts that you trust, or they might be your friends that you sort of trust in terms of their reviews will be high quality. So that's where I came from. And when I built and launched it, a couple of months ago, when I decided to implement ActivityPub, it started synchronizing with the rest of the Fediverse, and that's why it became very interesting. So activity streams protocol will define a number of models. So at the core level, you have objects. So like tweet is an object, a video is an object. They have defined the schemas for this. So for example, there's an object called note, which is, it could be somewhere between a tweet and a blog post, right? Because there's no limit on the characters. And it can have metadata attached. So it can have an image or media attached with it. It can have a URL to go with it. And then using objects, the actors can have activities around objects. So actors, again, is defined to be very flexible. It doesn't have to be a human person. It can be a company. It can be an app. It can be a service. And when actor operates on an object, it produces an activity. So think of it like an event. So I posted a tweet. So I am the actor. Creating is the activity, and the note is the object. Similarly, I might like your tweet. I might like your message. So that liking is an activity. And there's a posting of video could be an activity, right? And in Learn Awesome's case, posting a review of a learning resource. So I went through this course and I found it very high quality. That review is an activity, right? And that gets posted across the Fediverse as a note. In addition to this, they've also defined objects like collections where you can group things together. So there could be group of users that all of them are following you, and you are following all of them, right? So this is very similar to Twitter. I'll show you a screenshot of what. Okay. So in ActivityPub, the only difference with email is you're all of you are familiar with email, right? You sign up with an email provider like Gmail or Fastmail or Hey. They will hold your inbox on a cloud, right? The rest of the world is allowed to put things in your inbox, right? So that is called posting to your inbox, and you are allowed to get from that inbox. And you can use any client app. You can use Gmail's front end, or you can use Outlook or something else, right? Superhuman or something else. However, the other way around, like you don't have an outbox which remains on the cloud when I'm talking about email. ActivityPub simply adds that capability, right? So along with your inbox, your outbox also remains on a server of your choice. You are allowed to put things in your outbox, and the rest of the world is allowed to read from it. And just by adding this simple missing piece, it opens up a lot of capability. Right now, you can implement things like broadcast. Right? I am posting things in my outbox, which is public. The rest of the world can read my blog. Right? I can put a video in my outbox that becomes my YouTube channel. Right? I can put an audio file in my outbox; it becomes my podcast. And by allowing this sort of double operations by you and the rest of the world on your own server of your choice, we can implement a number of applications all along with a shared identity, shared schema, shared protocol of communication. Right? It's such a simple model to understand. Think of ActivityPub as an email, but where your outbox also is on the cloud, and you can choose your own server. So as I said, Actor will post material to the outbox. That's a post HTTP post API, and once it's there on the server, the rest of the world can read from it. And while putting things in the outbox, you can actually specify constraints. So for example, you can say that, okay, this tweet is for anyone to view. This tweet is only selected for selected users. Let's say I might have tagged only 4 friends, and that's a group that I'm posting to, or that this might be a direct message. Right? If that person also has an inbox, I can directly put things in their inbox also. So just by adding this missing piece, a lot of the social networks that we have seen become possible to implement. So as I said, now let's see how LearnAwesome went about implementing it. So it's a open source project that I've been hacking on in my nights and weekends for many months now. The idea is to create a learning map, and I believe learning 10x faster and more effective on any topic is possible. I have data to believe this, but that's the motivation for me to start. So you guys can all check it out. This is how it looks like. There are topics, there are formats. So for example, you can do a search like show me videos about machine learning which are 30 minutes long and are entertaining, right? And all that rich metadata is available. However, no content is hosted on LearnAwesome itself. It is just a repository of links, but with this high quality metadata. And around that collection of links, there's a social network. There's a community of learners that is built. They can post reviews just like Goodreads. They can discover each other. They can follow each other. You can gradually customize your dashboard so that you're following certain topics and certain people, and only high quality material as per those people will show up on your feed. So it's all functional. You can go and try it, check it out. However, what I wanted here was I wanted Mastodon users or ActivityPub users to be able to consume my learning activity, so my reviews, without signing up on LearnAwesome. And with Fediverse makes that possible. ActivityPub makes that possible. So let's say I'm a LearnAwesome user. I mark a book as 5-star. Oh, let's say this book about linear algebra is really high quality. I give it 5-star. I write a detailed review. That review, because every user on LearnAwesome has a ActivityPub profile, which can be followed by anybody else. So when a person follows me here on LearnAwesome, we will maintain a record here, a list of my followers on ActivityPub, and whenever I do some activity, event will get posted, and activity will get posted to all of those followers, individual servers, right? So I just need a background job and then it just integrates seamlessly, right? Users don't even have to leave their favorite apps. They don't have to visit Learn Awesome even once. So if you want to implement similar functionality in your web application, right? And I highly recommend that you should consider it because Fediverse is getting richer and richer. There are all sort of tons of applications, tons of amazing users, and they are sharing. It's like what Twitter used to be in the initial days, right? So if you want to implement this in your own applications, there are primarily 4 things that you need to implement. One is the discovery of users. So given a name at domain, how do I find out where are the rest of the API calls, right? And that is implemented in something called WebFinger. So you implement this path in your app where anyone can query that given username at this domain, what are the things that you know about it, right? That WebFinger is a very extensible protocol. You can return phone number, email. In our case, we will return the URL of that user's actor and inbox and outbox. So any ActivityPub client will make this call. They will figure out, okay, what is the actor URL? Where am I supposed to get the public key? Where do I read from? Where do I write from? Right, inbox and outbox. And I'll show you the sample responses, which are actually very easy to implement. It took me hardly three hours to implement ActivityPub in my app. So here is the WebFinger response. For every user, I maintain ActivityPub ID. For me, it's a direct mapping from my ID to ActivityPub ID, except that I will just replace hyphen with underscore. And the JSON will say that, hey, this user's actor URL is this one. Right? So I can show this response. Yeah, here is the response. So a query was made with this ID at learnawesome.org, and my server says, okay, you can find the actor information about this user at this link. And when you follow that link, that actor object will actually give the detailed URL, right? What is the user's name? What is the preferred username? What is the type? So in this case, it happens to be a person. There's a short bio that I'm publishing. Most important things are the inbox URL, the outbox URL, and the public key. So public key is important because if you're sending me a private message, or let's say my server is informing your server that this user has just posted this review, your server wants to validate that. Okay, the signature must verify, and therefore there's a public key that needs to be published. But yeah, most important things are the URL for the inbox and outbox. So as I said, in my Rails application, this is the JSON that I built for WebFinger query, and I returned it. And when you come to the actor object, these are the things that I return. So as you see, I am returning a type, a preferred username, a name and summary, and icon. Because if you're building something like Twitter, every user has a profile picture, and that's the image. In inbox and outbox and public key. Right? Now, when it comes to inbox, so as I showed you in the diagram, right, the rest of the world will be posting to a user's inbox on my end. So when I receive that request, my server, when it receives that request, what I do here is I have a verify call. So I make sure that the message is signed properly. And in this case, I'm responding to the follow request. Right. So this is a follow. Someone wants to follow me. And in that case, I will create an ActivityPub follow record in my database. And then I'll invoke a background job to send an accept response. Yes, I accept your follow request. In case the user wants to unfollow me, in that case, you can see that I just log it, and I will remove the ActivityPub record. So this is the activities that I am accepting as a sink of events, right? Learn Awesome is mostly a source of ActivityPub events, but it still needs to handle incoming follow and unfollow requests. Right? And the verifying signature is probably the least easy part of this, right? I had to do a little bit of experimentation here to find out how exactly this was. But all that happens is there is a header called HTTP signature, and it's supposed to map out to a match with a hash of certain parts. So the parts could be key ID, headers, and signature, right? And using those parts, if that signature matches, I can be sure that, okay, the request is actually coming from the server that it is coming from. So this is the verify part. And when something happens at my end and I have a list of followers for every user, I need to inform all their servers, right? So I have this method ActivityPub. All it does is for every follower, it creates a signature header and then it does a HTTP post. So it takes a document, which in my case is a review. In your case, it could be a video or a podcast or audio or any of the existing types that ActivityPub supports. I add those headers with a signature and then I just do HTTP post. So this happens in async mode. So it happens in a background job. But it's fairly simple, as you can see, right? All I need to do is just give a timestamp and then sign the headers. And the JSON that I need to send, again, I need to map it to the ActivityPub schema. So I had a review. So in this case, as you can see, I am sending a create note activity. So as you can see, type is create, but the object type is note. And in that content field, I will send my ActivityPub message. So for me, it's a short enough text message that Nilesh just completed reading this book. Here is the image associated with it. He has given 5-star rating to that, right? So all of that information goes into the message. And I just put a timestamp and create note activity, and then this is the one I send up posting to their servers. So once my server has put it, there's that message in their inbox. Whenever they go online, whenever they come online or they check their app, they will see the activity. At no point of time they had to come to Learn Awesome, right? They did not have to visit. They did not even have to know about it. All they need to do was, as a user, I shared my ActivityPub ID, which is user ID at learnawesome.org, and they just followed it within their own client apps, right? So it works very seamlessly, and such a simple thing to implement, right? As you saw, that there are just 4 to implement. You implement a webfinger to discover information about a user. That webfinger response will have the link of that URL. Actor URL will return an object which has the inbox URL and outbox URL. Inbox will be used where your server can post to my server for each user. So to say that, okay, I want to follow this guy, I want to unfollow this guy, right? And outbox is only necessary when you want to read from, you want to do a poll from what this user has been doing, right? So in my case, what I'm doing is I'm keeping a record of all the followers, and when something interesting happens, when there is an event to publish, I'll just iterate through all the followers and I just push this activity event to all of them. So using just these 4 routes in the right way, in the schema compliant way, your app will integrate with the rest of the Fediverse, right? And it has a number of apps which work with it, right? I've been on my mobile, I'll be using this app called Tusky. It's a Twitter equivalent, but it works with the server that I'm using for my microblogging, which is foster.org. And it's been working quite well. And I hope that, it seems, right? It's not tricky. Probably the trickiest part is this signification part. And as you can see, it's not much. It's just 10 lines of code. But once you do this, it only needs to be done once, right? Then your app is part of the entire ecosystem. And this is where my main point is, right? ActivityPub started out as an equivalent for building a microblogging network. But if you just think about it, at what is going on here, right? It's a distributed PubSub protocol for the entire web. Apps can subscribe to each other across domains, across owners, across servers, right? And something interesting happen, it can be broadcasted to all the subscribers, and apps can follow each other, and the systems can follow each other. AWS can become a publisher of ActivityPub events, right? All your monitoring dashboards can become ActivityPub clients. So it opens up a number of possibilities, and I think as developers, we should look at ActivityPub as a generic, powerful glue, right? It allows us to build far more interesting applications. At the time, we are also solving the problems like centralization and censorship and filter bubbles and other things. So this is that's all the introduction that I wanted to give for ActivityPub. This is the signing part. So when I'm sending a message, so when I'm sending a message to your server, I will need to sign it, and therefore this is the string that I create. It is a request I get. I identify request type. There's a host and date that I add, and then those are the same fields which I end up encoding to the users. So it's a fairly simple method. There are some links that I can share. I can share this slideshow later if you want to implement. And that's basically the brief summary of what ActivityPub is, how it can be implemented. And I hope I'm able to get you, excited about how your apps can fit into the rest of the ecosystem, right? That's where the true value will lie. So I'm here for any questions that you might have. Thank you so much, Pradeep, for letting me speak.
Amazing. Thanks a lot for this presentation, Nilesh. To the audience, you can ask the questions on live.gitcommit.show. There is a question answer chat section on the right of your live stream. So do use that to ask any questions you want to. And there is a button, clap button over there, which you can use to show appreciation for the speaker. And it will give us feedback as well about the talk, about the sessions that we are doing. So I have lots of questions, Nilesh, here.
Okay.
It's really wonderful so getting to know about ActivityPub and feeling that, yes, now we can create our own social network. Before that, it was really complex and we needed to make lots of decisions. And I think ActivityPub is cutting down that part, and we don't need to make so many decisions, rather focus on the best practices which has been put in the form of protocol.
Right.
So this is great to know. So first thing that comes to my mind is that all the data is public. Is it so?
Not really, but it was designed for social networking, and it's not really a private messaging platform. But there is support for direct messages which are fully end-to-end encrypted. So if you want to limit your message to a certain group, maybe one individual or a limited number of users, you can do that. And if you have tried Mastodon, you can see that that's how it works. I can just quickly share my screen to show you again.
Sure.
Right. So this is my Mastodon that account. As you can see, it looks very much like Twitter, right? But when I'm posting something, here I have an option, right? Whether I want a message to be public or unlisted or followers only or a direct. Now, this is not unique to Mastodon. This is core part of ActivityPub, right? And the protocol supports that level of granularity.
Got it. So there are features there are some data fields probably which define the privacy level of each content that we are sharing.
Yes.
And got it. But anyone can send message. That is for sure, because we are making our ID public. Is it correct?
So yeah, again, as I say, a very simple way to understand this is like email.
Right.
You can host your own email. If you don't like to host your own email, you can subscribe to email hosting providers, or in the worst case, you can just sign up on someone else's server like Gmail, right? So you have this various levels of detail. Whatever control you are comfortable with, whatever security that you want, whatever privacy that you want, you just choose what is appropriate for you. If you stop liking someone's governance behavior, you just move and port your account to some another provider. It will still continue to work.
Provider, what do you mean by that? I think you haven't mentioned that.
Right. So, for example, right now, if you don't like what Twitter is doing, you really don't have any choice, right? All your followers are on Twitter. But in ActivityPub, that portability is there. So there's a seamless way of redirecting users from one server to another server. And you can just start publishing your new identifier, new server. But anybody who still goes to your old server will automatically get redirected to your new account, new identity. So it is designed to be very portable, very user friendly. But yeah, just think of the way email works, right? I can host my own email server. I can use SendGrid. I can use AWS, or I can use Gmail, right? All these possibilities are there. Like some people are paranoid enough that they will run their own email server, like Inbox, and that also works. So ActivityPub, I can give some insight. As in, Mastodon is written in Rails, and it's slightly heavy on the memory side. But I was able to run Pleroma on Raspberry Pi, right? So I was running a full-fledged ActivityPub network, which is the equivalent of Twitter, on my Raspberry Pi. It's like 5 watts of power, always on connectivity. So there are multiple implementations that exist. You don't really have to be satisfied with whatever is one vendor is providing. You can use anyone's implementation. You can write your own.
Got it. So similar to email, are there any ways that this specification talks about how to deal with spam?
So again, here the spam can be controlled at each instance level, right? So everyone who is running a server, they are the administrator of that server. They can declare certain policies. So in ActivityPub, a lot of servers have declared that they will be not accepting any messages from, let's say, ActivityPub servers running in North Korea, right? You can put a whitelist, you can put a blacklist. At admin level, a lot of management is possible, and therefore you are incentivized to just find the good admins that you can trust, right? If your expectations are really high and then you really want high level of control, then you run your own server with whatever policies that you want.
Got it. So that is not covered by the protocol, rather
Yes.
the other layer which could be put on over this.
So, again, so it's same idea as email, right? Each email server will, each inbox provider will control what is called spam, what is not called spam, right? Same idea here.
Got it. Cool. So one thing okay, just before that, what type of content is supported? You shared that there is content field specifically, and you can put all your messages there. So what kind of message? Is this just text or something else as well?
No, so they have defined types for text. There's audio, there's video. There are files that you can send. So people are building Google Drive equivalent using ActivityPub, right? So there's a project called Nextcloud, and that actually implements ActivityPub, and you can transfer files around. It can be as big as entire movies. So it's just a schema, right? And schema can be made very flexible as long as you get the core concepts right. And the core concept here is that every user has one inbox and one outbox in the cloud, and that just opens up a number of possibilities.
So how you implement the content, it's up to the user that whether you want to include.
And so that vocabulary, right? There's something called a note. Note is like a blog article, and that vocabulary is extensible. You can create new object types. So tomorrow you might say, I have an object type called app, or I have an object type called course, and it's an open source standard. So people will implement support for it, and it can just get adopted. You're not really bottlenecked by a single corporation.
Okay, so what you mean to say is that we need to add more of our fields on top of what has been specified by this ActivityPub protocol.
So in most cases,
not a native support.
In most cases, you will not need to do this, right? So for example, I had an object type called review.
I see.
But I was able to leverage the note type because all I need.
Share that.
Yeah. So note type is essentially a text message along with a link, right? And that's all you need really for sharing reviews, right? Some text along with a link, and then some metadata, like it could have media like images or videos attached to it. So in most cases, you will not need to extend the vocabulary. But if you really need to, let's say, for example, you want to share places or calendar events, in that case, it's an open source standard. Anyone can suggest ideas and they will get adopted.
Is there any example that you want to show here about this? Code example specific.
I don't think I have an example ready at this point.
Cool, no problem. So about this, so there is an RFC for this already, which proper specification which has all the details that you have talked about. So I was just going through over that, like there are different kinds of details over there. As you have mentioned, this object is there, actor is there, collections are there, client to server interaction and server to server interaction, then security consideration and all these things. So, and this seems a very detailed document. Yeah. So this reminds me when I was reading RFC for this OAuth. So I wanted to implement this authentication in my application, and I read at least 10, 12 different kinds of RFCs related to tokens and OAuth 2.0.
So I would say OAuth is actually much more complex than ActivityPub. It turned out to be a fairly simple protocol to implement. Really, I just had to implement inbox and outbox, and it was done. Right. OAuth is a beast.
So one thing actually, what it reminded me is that reading all those RFC documentation, I think we should read it, and that's definitely the best way to go about it. But for the start, is there any easy way? Like, is there any library that we can use for ActivityPub?
So libraries will depend on the language that you are working with, and the website that I took that image from, right? It's called activitypub.rocks. They have a very good amount of information. What you can do although is you can go to Learn Awesome and search for ActivityPub. So that exists as a topic, and you'll find learning resources about ActivityPub. Some of them have been collected. That collection needs to be improved, but still there are some starting points, like pointers are there.
So activitypub.rocks has all the different kind of libraries that might
So
be there for
all you need to do is
languages.
go to Learn Awesome, search for ActivityPub, you'll find it.
Got it. Cool. So, yes. About authentication, you were sharing that there is a signing mechanism
Yes.
to verify whether this server is from the website. So this, what can we call it? Let's say a server activity, ActivityPub server. Let's call it.
Right.
So is there a way on the different route from user to this ActivityPub server?
So I think it's okay to go a little bit into detail here. Let's say you are a consumer of those events. You are using some ActivityPub app like Mastodon or something, and I am posting reviews. My server is posting reviews via Learn Awesome to you, and you want to be sure that this is correct, like it has not been tampered with, it is not fake. So there are two levels of security that you want. One, that it is really coming from Learn Awesome, right? And second, it is really coming from Nilesh, right? So ActivityPub lets you do either of those. What you need to do is decide in the implementation stage whether you want to maintain key pairs for every user separately, or you just want to maintain one single key pair for the server alone. So the second choice is what I've made for the Learn Awesome thing, right? As you saw in the code, I was sharing a public key, right? That public key happens to be same for all Learn Awesome users, but the protocol doesn't mandate that, right? I could have maintained a key pair for each separate user, and the message that your server would receive would be signed with that private key. So you would get a guarantee that yes, this message is really coming from Nilesh only, right? Even Learn Awesome server could not tamper with that. Now, in my case, I've sort of chosen a simple solution, which is okay. One key is good enough, but most implementation will actually achieve this, right? Every users will maintain a key pair on the server, and each activity will be signed by the right key.
Got it. So we can use this key pairs for different users, different key pairs.
Yeah, every user can have a separate key pair. Maybe your app or your web app can allow the users to upload their own keys, right? This is what GitHub does. You can upload your own SSH keys, right? The public key, and all the commits are signed by your private key. You could implement something like that in the web app. It depends on what security versus convenience trade-off you want to achieve.
Got it. So using these libraries that we can find activitypub.rocks, how much time do you think it will take, or how much time did it take you to create a simple solution, as you have said, inbox, outbox, and actors and all these things?
For me, it literally took 3 hours. That's all.
3 hours.
That's all.
Awesome.
And most of like 1.5 hours was spent just figuring out the signature verification, because Mastodon is there. Mastodon is open source Rails app which implements ActivityPub. So I got some ideas from there, but their code is very complex from from my perspective. What I wanted was a very simple implementation. So yeah, Rails makes it pretty easy to implement new routes and new libraries. And just 3 hours is without using any library, right? It's just using the standard. Okay, I'll receive a JSON on this inbox route. I'll have to publish this JSON on the outbox, and then I have to make sure that signature is valid. That's all. So it's not a lot of effort, and yet it can unlock a lot of capabilities, right? So it's like machine learning in that way.
Right. So while implementing this, did you find any part that is missing there, or any part which was the most challenging part? What was the most challenging part in creating a complete production level app?
So I would say that for every language, we should start seeing ready to use libraries to just plug it in, and then your app is ActivityPub compliant. You just map it to the right objects. I think they would help, but I don't think that's a very strong missing piece, right? As I said, it just took me 3 hours, right? So without those libraries, it's still only 3 hours of work, no matter what library or framework you're using. So I wouldn't say that's a big missing piece, but yeah, it helps that if all of us are reusing the same code, and it can be make sure that it's secure and it is up to date and it is standard compliant. So those libraries will start helping. I think they do exist for many of the languages. I could not find something for Ruby that was very actively maintained. So it was easy enough for me to just implement it on my own. The good part is that I started promoting ActivityPub publicly only when it has reached W3C's recommended status, right? A protocol goes through a lot of iterations in alpha, beta, and version 0.5 and 8. But once it reaches that recommended status, you can be confident that, okay, now it is stable. Now it is not going to change in fundamentally different ways. So that stability is very, it invokes confidence, and that's a very good sign that, okay, now it's ready. I think Twitter CEO sometime last year said that they want to decentralize Twitter because they are in a tremendous pressure of, from the governments. And many people just recommended, okay, now ActivityPub is ready. That's what Twitter should go with. We'll see what happens. But in the meanwhile, the alternatives are quite good, I would say. And the communities are worth checking out actually for developers and for technical people at least. While the masses are still taking time to come, but there's a lot of content, there's a lot of users posting regularly, so it does feel like Facebook in the early days or Twitter in the early days.
Okay, so you said decentralized, and decentralized requires a common specification, common data types. So that's what kind of ActivityPub is doing that. But you also said that the user is free to customize it, specifically when we talk about major things like photos, videos, or such type of content. How do you implement that? If it is left open to the user to implement it the way they want, will we have a common data type over there, or what is the way to go about that for different content types?
Okay. So again, take email as an analogy. The protocol is stable. The protocol tells you how the message can be sent and received. What filterings you want to implement is left to the implementation, right? So Mastodon is one of the implementation. Plerorama is another implementation. LearnAwesome is another implementation. PeerTube is another one. And this implementation will take their own decisions, right? Some of them will say, okay, we'll give this control to the users. Some of those will say that, okay, we know what is good for you, and we have made those decisions, right? And there is space for all kind of options. So yeah, the filtering capabilities will boil down to the implementation, not to the protocol itself. So if you want to know how Mastodon does filtering, then you should check out Mastodon, right? Pleroma, for example, is obviously it supports ActivityPub, but it is also compatible with Mastodon itself. So I can sign up on some Pleroma server and subscribe to anybody who's using Mastodon, right? So yeah, filtering is really left out as close to the user as possible, because that is the way it makes sense. The core protocol should be as dumb, and there should be dumb pipes like TCP/IP or like HTTP, right? They should not have a lot of intelligence built into that layer. So it's an idea from computer science which is called move the intelligence out on the edge, right? Not at the center.
Awesome, makes sense. So I think this is very useful information and helps people accelerate their learning in ActivityPub. And I have one more question, which is related to more of theme of the topic, which is pursuit of mastery. For pursuit of mastery is the theme of this conference. So do you have any thoughts on sharing about mastery? What do you understand, or anything you would like to share? And at the same time, let me combine a couple of questions in this one only. So another question will be, what ideas would you suggest for people to become a fast learner? And then third question, if you can answer all of those together, will be your favorite book.
Okay, very interesting questions. I've done hiring for almost 10 years now. I've seen lots of people grow and develop and become better at their jobs, and some of the learnings have come from there. One is there is a very clear difference in mindset that makes a difference. So I think Carol Dweck talks about it. There's a growth mindset and there's a fixed mindset, right? The people who have a growth mindset, who believe that, okay, I can learn this, right? They are not afraid. They are not afraid of failing, but they are not also afraid of trying. And that mindset is the number one key. right? That's why if you sign up on Khan Academy, they spend a lot of time just giving you that mindset, right? That yes, I can learn this, I can learn this. So once you have that growth mindset, you will be open to challenge, right? You'll not look at failure as a failure. You'll see it as okay, now I know what doesn't work for me, right? Now I know what I'm not currently good at, and you just start that shift, and then things it makes a lot of difference into your attitude, how you approach work, how you approach learning, uh, what you do on your spare time, right? So that is the number one thing. This phenomena is actually quite very well known, right? Carol Dweck's book actually became very popular. The point that I would like to add is, if you have, let's say, 20 hours allocated to learning some new skill, I would spend at least 4 hours just researching the right material. Right, 1/5 of the time I'm willing to spend. Okay, this course is taking this approach, doesn't work for me. So, for example, I'll give an. I was learning Clojure for a project sometime last year, and I've never done Clojure. Right, never done any Lisp. I came from Java, Ruby, Python kind of background. But using one of the website that I found, it's called LearnX in 5 minutes. But using that site, I was able to become like 50% productive within 3 hours. So it took me 2 hours to find that, right? But spending time on finding the material that works for you, right? So, for example, you might be more attuned to podcast because the only time for learning that you have is on the way to on your commute. So maybe podcast is what you want. Maybe videos is what you want. Maybe you want interactive exercises. Maybe you just want 1 hour of pair programming, right, with somebody who knows his stuff. So I would say spend invest time into finding the material that works for you, and then you take that. It really does wonders. So these are the two things that I would come to my mind. And this sort of answers the second questions, how to learn more effectively. In terms of my favorite book, there are many actually. I would say one of the good books has been like any book by. I tend to read a lot of analytical philosophy. So Bertrand Russell is one of my favorite authors because he's very courageous in his writings, but he's also very clear, right? So this combination I found very nice. So.
Amazing. So I still have a lots of questions, but I think we are over time and we will be waiting for next speaker. So we will have to part our ways right now, and probably I'll connect with you in one-on-one discussion for more questions. And you can share how other people who are seeing this, they can connect with you, or any last message that you would like to share with them.
Yeah, so feel free to connect me on Twitter or an email, wherever you want. I mean, you can find me easily. The message that I would say is, I think we need to continuously learn because the technology that we have gotten used to are still continuously changing, right? So HTTP itself, we've known that, okay, how TCP, and then the Google came out with the Speedy, and then now Quick protocol, and now we have HTTP2 where servers can actually push messages to the clients. A lot of capabilities that we have gotten used to over last 15 years are now changing. So like, who knew that websites will support push notifications? So yeah, continuous learning is the way to go. But also, I would say that figure out and make those decisions which actually benefit the user. They are the reasons why we exist, why we get paid, and we should really be trying to make their jobs easy, their lives easy. Yeah, that's all I have.
Great. Thanks a lot for this wonderful talk, and see you later. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much, Pradeep. Bye-bye.